Well, folks, as you can see, I have Aristo with me again, and the video for July 28th is entitled The State of the World, and it'll be as previous videos that I've made with Aristo. I'll interrupt, but mostly it's going to be him talking, and go ahead, Aristo.
Thank you, Ron, once again. I'm glad to be here. And it's a kind of impromptu, we decided, Ron asked me, why, do you want to do a video? Let's do a video. But as usual, I don't know what I'm going to say. There's a whole bunch of topics. And this time, you and I, Ron, were actually talking for quite a bit of time before the video came on. And, usually our discussions begin with a sense of distress. It's not a sense of hope and laughter and joking around. Sometimes we joke around, of course, but there's always a sense of distress in there. And this time the distress was because Ron's internet, kept getting cut off. So we don't want that to happen again. And this led to a whole bunch of other things. And Ron was telling me about the Heather Tucci-Jarraf situation, where she's still in jail, I guess, and how much his viewership has gone up ever since this was promoted. So I just want to, and the reason I'm using the State of the World title is because I really don't have anything else. We're going to talk about the world a little bit, but for me, the more important thing is us, you, me, them, all of it. Not as a collective state, but as individuals. Individuality is being repressed in this world, in my honest opinion. I mean, when I grew up, in America, in the US, they talked about, everybody was an anti-communist, of course. And individuality was the big ideal. They would show pictures of Maoist China, and when I was a kid, and everybody wearing the same clothes and driving their little bicycles, and everybody being similar, and call this oppression, and oh, we don't want to be like that. And yet, this is how people are. I'm not just talking about fashions and trends, I'm talking about the way people think. Herd mentality. We all criticize it, but it's there. You can't help it. If I want to relate to people, I have to get into the herd mentality, or they won't listen. People don't look at me like individuals. I'm speaking generally, of course, and present company excluded and present viewership excluded. Nobody likes to face this. I don't see it in myself generally, but I can see that I conform to it. Maybe you, the viewer, conforms to it because you can't help it, because nobody's going to listen to you unless you do. You have to speak their language. You have to feel as they feel. And so even if you have an inkling of individuality in this world, you have to fall in line with the state of the world. The state, not just the state as it is, the presence of the world, but the state as in dictatorial state or political state or economic state, the ruling dictates of the world, where your freedom actually is not there. We all say this is a slave planet, and that pisses me off, It pisses me off because why are you blaming the damn planet? What is the planet? And it's damn because you're blaming it. That's one of the reasons it's damn. Why is this a prison planet, a prison reality? Who makes up this shit?
Well, from the human perspective, humans are beginning to wake up enough to recognize that we are in prison.
Well, let's put it this way. If you take the prison is not the land it's built upon. The prison is the institution upon the land.
And the state of mind.
Exactly. And where we are the ones holding that mind. The planet has nothing to do with it except the fact that it has certain given biological conditions that we think do not exist in spirit. But nobody has any clue what so-called spirit is, really. They have an intuitive sense of it. And they have a certain wishful thinking and wishful feeling of it, but nobody can be certain. Otherwise, everybody would be certain. I mean, real certainty is catchy, and that's how religions are made. But this is even religions are collective wishful thinking. I don't want to sound cynical here, and I know I would even disagree with myself on many, many points. I'm speaking generally, I'm speaking generally in order to point on attention that the state of the world is not the earth. The world is human society and what human society is doing to the earth. And there are many people who say, well, it's humanity that's a plague and we got to remove it. They're saying nothing really different in terms of results from the ones that tell us that the planet is at fault and we need to get out of here. In both cases, something is trying to divorce us from our planetary home. This is
from
where
our physicality in general.
From our physicality in general. Something, somehow, you know, at least in the sense of pattern recognition, if you look at everything, you see patterns. It's very important to be able to notice patterns and to evaluate the patterns. There's a spiritual trend, as you know, that says don't judge anything, which doesn't mean, you know, technically that really means don't condemn anything.
Right.
Until you really...
But people use it to mean don't even be discerning.
No, don't evaluate anything.
Something bad. That's
you can't come to any conclusions about anything, which means you cannot act. Stop acting, sit there and just look at it and look at it and look at it until you disappear, you know, or until something intervenes. I mean, come on, a snake looks at its victim and the victim freezes and does nothing. Isn't that what just simply observing does? You're taking a spiritual principle that's very, very valid and is turning into a mental idea. Something that all the spiritual traditions are telling us is the mind that's the problem. The conditioned mind, specifically, is the problem.
The conditioned mind, right.
You know, I mean, Buddhism is, for example, it's trendy, has been, and all of this. And Buddhism is basically mentalism. The Buddhi is the higher intellect. The Buddha is really a genius. The genius has come and told us what the right way of life is. And that right way of life is basically remove your conditioning. In India, they you know, these crazy types, for us crazy types, smear themselves with ashes. They go to the cremation grounds where they burn the dead, and they cut off pieces of flesh and eat them in front of everybody else. You know, they cover themselves in excrement sometimes. And they are considered enlightened. The reason is that Indian society, has been repressed and with strict taboos. You can't do anything. Women are repressed, you know, traditionally. I'm not speaking today. So the only way you can break the mold of this conditioning is to simply act crazy, act outrageous, and make a demonstration out of it. And then you're not tied into this guilt trip of having to be proper, of having to be civilized even. We don't need to do that. We have the opposite problem. We don't, it's not just we're told at this point, because the prison isn't one of ordered structures so much. It's a chaos prison. It's a prison of fear. It's telling us, you know, oh, uncertainty, the world is uncertain, the world is crazy, the world is chaotic. If you don't do what we say to order it up into a nice world order, then, you know, you're going to, you know, go into the hands of evil, of the psychopaths. Like I said in the previous video, you know, somebody was talking about some statue somewhere, I don't know where it is, where it has the left hand and the right hand. It's a mystical thing. And the left hand is the evil claw that scares all the sheep and the lemmings to run away. And then the right hand is the shepherd who grabs them, holds them, and crushes them into place in the order they deserve. And then he puts them into the meat grinder, he or she, and they become meat for the wicked, so to speak, or the ones who rule, who laugh at the stupidity of the lemmings. You know, there's one thing that I agree with those people who are, you know, vegans, in philosophically speaking. It's like, okay, you're a predator or an eater of so-called, you know, you eat meat, even if nature dictates it for you, whatever. You eat meat, then you can expect for somebody to label you as meat at some place. You know, biology is a matter of food chain. You're not at the top of the food chain. If you're going to eat this meat, but the point is, whether you eat plants or meat, there's still going to be the predator.
Well, I had a lady in one discussion recently. She says, I don't eat vegetables because they've got bugs in them and I don't want to eat bugs.
See, we're given
specifically about broccoli.
Yeah, I love broccoli. But the thing is,
Me too.
the planet, if you don't really work for the planet, you know, and part of that is working truly for humanity as the stewards of the planet. If you don't do that, then what the hell is not eating meat going to help? You're just standing back and saying, I didn't touch anything. I didn't do anything. I starved myself. I didn't participate in the thing. And then I died, my body fed something. Yeah, and then your place, your physicality was taken over by something else, or your lack of initiative, which is a human God-given gift. I mean, you're screaming at God, why doesn't God do anything? Well, why don't you use your God-given gifts? You know, why aren't they in play? Why don't you learn to overcome? Because these God-given gifts are here so we can overcome psychopathy. forever. If we can do that, then we can perceive the God that is there, but now is a mystery. The thing is that we are given everything. It's there. And we don't use it because we are being outmaneuvered, because we are conditioned to remain in the state where we can be
Well,
outmaneuvered.
brainwashing.
Exactly. Very clean. You know, and that's why I agree with Max Eigen when he says, look, the New World Order isn't going to be some dictatorship of some, you know, military boot crushing you. It's going to be everybody with their cell phones with a blank look on their face, just typing in constantly stupid things and being eaten alive. You know, they're basically being worked until they die at a young age, until everybody just dies off with a tiny little trigger. If everybody's weakened in terms of the immune system and in terms of the mind, those people who are living just a little bit above their level in terms of well-being and access to resources, that minority, all they have to do is just do some minor thing like a small virus that's okay for them, and the rest of the peasants will go away. You know, some minor event, something, you know, no wars are necessary. Wars have become so terrifying because the terror is the deterrent. Right now, everybody, you know, I mean, look at Greece. They're not reacting because they're afraid of war. Syria is way too close. Turkey is way even closer, you know. And you have all these other states that are constantly threatening. So you have certain examples in the Middle East, you know, like Libya, for example, which is gone, you know, and they say you can be next. And there's nothing to stop it when you're a little at a time. They go to one country, destroy it, and another country, destroy it. They don't care. They would do that. You know, but it isn't in their quote unquote best interest to do this whole scale. They can't because they'll lose everything. So because they have made the weapons so bad and everything so terrifying that it can't really be used. But if you play a game of chicken, you're going to be taken out one at a time, like you were. You're out there, and nobody's
What do you
supporting
think of BRICS?
you.
You understand what I mean by BRICS?
Yes, I understand. I think BRICS is the right hand. You know that analogy I said, the claw. Okay, the claw is the United States.
I had to throw that out because it came in.
Exactly. I think BRICS, because it's all the same system. These are the same people. How can you have BRICS when in the corner you see all these other where they're all shaking hands and partying, having a good time, and wearing their Masonic regalia or whatever, you know? And you know, in China, that's part of BRICS. Why all the slave labor over there? You know, we're using their products mostly, and it's all toxic. You know, we're being toxified because of them. A lot of the food in Greece is this country that if it has one thing, it has agriculture. EU says, no, you can't. We're going to go, or at this point, the banks aren't going to even give you loans because the taxes are too high, this or that. So, you know, you got to export. We come in, we'll take it from your hands. So there's nothing for the locals except Chinese products. The Chinese said, we'll give you products. Yeah, they're all poison, but, you know, whatever. And they're part of BRICS. You have a scenario.
You know, it came up in our discussion last night.
See, people react to this.
I mentioned Putin, and somebody says, I hate Putin. I says, he's the best leader in the whole world.
Yeah, of course he is. He is. He's the ideal New World Order leader because he's going to bring you. But, you know, you remember your Bible, and I'm not saying I really believe it literally. And, you know, for me, the book of Revelations is a mystical allegory. It has a lot of things that are Kabbalistic, you know, or proto-Kabbalistic, a lot of mystical dynamics, symbolism, the seven this, the seven that, the horsemen are stellar constellations, you know, things like that. So you can use it as a kind of allegory for enlightenment, but whoever wrote this apparently, to me, took these symbols and used them as a political, you know, the language of politics.
I see it that way too. But I don't base the thing about Putin and Russia on, it's more Edgar Casey and the Anastasia books.
Yes, but they speak up until a certain point. Edgar Casey doesn't give you the whole story.
No.
You know, he only comes to a certain point, and that's it. Why doesn't he go further? I'm not saying he's part of it, you know, but I'm saying there's a chaos going on. There's an uncertainty factor. When you predict the future, you're actually looking to probabilities. You're not looking at what's going to happen. If there's enough of a collective consensus about a given probability, which might even be capitulation. It doesn't have to be you know, oh, this is meant to be, so it has to happen, it's fate. No, if we are terrorized enough to say, I mean, why do they want to convince us that this person or that person is ideal? I mean, they can just coerce us or terrorize, or not even that, they can just go do it. Why don't they just do it? Why don't they just bring in the New World Order? Because it's gonna be a bitch to sustain it if people are not fully brainwashed. You cannot have a lasting empire. It's not even lasting. These days, time is much faster than before. That's the one thing I agree with, because communication technology, that's the one drawback for them, is that you have communication technology.
The spy on us, but it's also the tool of the awakening.
Exactly, it can be. It can be the tool of brainwashing, the tool of awakening. It's a tool. Can we grasp this tool and use it in our favor? It's not going to be easy because somebody else is empowering the tool. Somebody else is funding the tool. We are allowed to use it on their terms. So we need to understand that we're using Facebook on somebody else's terms. And so it's going to take a shitload of ingenuity, a shitload of creativity, a shitload of enlightenment, a shitload of deconditioned courage to be able, and the daring to be able to not just question the system, you question your friends. You know, you question people who you actually trust, but know they're human and might make mistakes. You don't, you know, you don't question psychopaths. You fight them. You stand up to them, but in a way that is smart. And so smart means outside of their box. The thing is, you want to step out.
It's hard to get outside of their box. That's the problem.
I mean, when people say think outside the box, actually, you know, I could never, you know, pressure anybody to think outside of any box, because we're human beings. We need boundaries in some way. We need references, you know. I mean, you have to talk. Even words are a form of boxing, but they can be a very beautiful box. It's not a confining box. But the thing is, architecture, you know, is full of boxes. But you have to, you know, if we want to make a difference, we have to get outside of their box. Question the people you think are your friends until you reach a point when you know that whether they know it or not, they're not your friends. They're not working in best interests.
That's why I have so many people that were my friends that bye-bye, you know, you're not my friend anymore. When they get, as I won't argue with people.
Yeah.
It pisses some of my local friends, including my son sometimes, off. Because I won't argue. I don't want to argue. There's no point butting heads.
If you spend your whole life, I mean, you can always change your mind. There's always things that make you change your mind and all of this. And that's what deconditioning is. And we have to, and it's in our best interest to remain open-minded. But open-mindedness has to, you know, it's not to be confused, in my honest opinion, with passivity. Being simply a passive sponge that sits there and observes and doesn't discern and doesn't evaluate, because we're talking about the physical world here. We're not talking about a world of, you know, make-believe or you know, even if it's conditioned and it's an illusion, you know, conditioning is an illusion, but it's not make-believe. It's made belief. It's belief that is turned real, which means it's an experience, as you say. And as such, it should be treated like an experience. You cannot ignore it. And in my honest opinion, from what I'm seeing on the internet, on especially social media, is the same roundabout, round and round and round. It's like somebody's, you know, a roundabout where cars go round and round, and then there's places where you go in and places where you go out. The exits have been blocked. And just every time somebody comes up and finds an exit, then a new car is injected or a new input is injected that causes even more confusion. And trolls come in, of course, to create that fear, because everybody is terrified of being attacked. And of course they are, because it used to be the trolls were amateurs. You know, they used to be that you could actually figure out ways to
now they're paid for by the government.
Many of them are, but at the same time, look, if I want to be a troll, all I have to go is to go to YouTube on DIY sites of videos that tell me how to argue. There's a whole list of how to argue, and neuro-linguistic programming is almost taught for free. It's not taught for free for why? This thing used to be something you had to pay thousands of dollars to learn. So the people who had the wealth learned this, and then they actually used it against everybody else. This is hypnosis, you know, and most people don't really use it well, but so you have to dumb down the population. If these mind control methods were actually good, you wouldn't have to be dumbed down. You could be controlled from where you are. But that's the thing. That's the weakness of it, is that you need to be dumbed down for it to work. So, the problem is you don't know if you're dumbed down or not, especially if you have some
that
ego.
is the problem.
You
People
really don't
realize
know.
they don't have all the facts, so how can they make wise decisions?
Well, you'll never have the facts, and half your facts are lies. And how do you know which are the lies and which is the truth? You have to go by a different criteria. But these criteria, these criteria are going to be unacceptable to the consensus of, your conditioning. It has to be that way. Otherwise, we would all go for the right criteria and we would all figure it out. But the thing is, your intuition, for example. And so many people say, no, I meditate, I do this, I do that. I have intuition, I'm very discerning. But all of a sudden you realize, well, this discernment isn't getting me anywhere. Or it's getting me into arguments, or I'm the one who's right and they're wrong, and round again in the roundabout. And the thing is, well, then your discernment is really not discernment with a capital D. It's a tiny discernment that's twisted and distorted. It may be on the right track, because a lot of people don't want to listen because of the dissonance of hopelessness. Hopium is effective for a reason. It's effective because we are afraid of being hopeless, because we come to the conclusion all too easy that it's hopeless. Because we don't see a solution means there is none. And that's bullshit. That's dependency. We're dependent on a savior, We've been saying it, many people, me, you even, other people, although you retracted most of the time, I think, that we are the ones we have been waiting for. The Hopi prophecy was correct, in my honest opinion. We will turn and say we are the saviors. We are not just saving ourselves, we are saving the planet. This is not a prison planet. This is a planet with prisons. So we are here that is the state of the world. So we eliminate the prison system. But that doesn't mean we have to go into chaos. And it also probably doesn't mean that paradise is just around the corner. Unless you create a state of paradise potential within yourself, you won't even be able to perceive paradise if it hits you in the face. So there's a lot to do, and that's why I come, and I talk with you, or else I'd say there's no point. People are trying to get out of the roundabout. But the thing is, if you're going to observe something, observe the roundabout. Look at what's going on. Look at the injected input. Every time you come up with something and think there's a solution, something else is injected because it tries to, and you look toward that, and then an access is blocked. You could have left the roundabout, and gone to a solution, but an access is blocked. So the roundabout has a structure. It's a definite technique that's being used against us. And we can learn this technique. And we don't have to turn it around against them. They don't really matter per se. Because
there's such a small percentage of the total population.
Well, they're a small percentage, but at the same time, their substance is insignificant. They have no value. This is why they create systems that are value-based. That's why they sell and prostitute value. Value, in my honest opinion, is not meant to be prostituted. That's one of our conditionings. Gold. Why the fuck is gold valuable? Who the fuck gives a fuck about this stuff? It's useful in technology. Sorry for my French, but it's useful in technology a little bit. But there is a psychic element that if you wear gold, because it's a conductor, I would say, okay, it magnifies your energy body. It makes you look cool. It makes a ruler look imposing. I command you. And so the gold, and they used to put a lot of gold on themselves, headdresses, breastplates, this, that. It wasn't just a little ring or a pendant or something. In the beginning, they needed a lot of gold for all the peasants, the idiots out there, to be impressed. And they respect gold for that. And because of all the focus, if we all focus and get gold fever, people will, because of all that focus, gold now has charged with this thing, with this opium, this promise that it's going to give you a life of ease and whatever you want, a fulfillment
it's
of your desires.
Spelled A-U.
Yeah, exactly. Artificial units, But see, all of this is conditioning. And we are afraid at this point, what is going to be left if our conditioning goes away? Because when we look up away from it, there's another conditioning right there that we think is reality. is the horizon of our possibility. And that's the terrorist. It's the fear. So we say we have to eliminate our fears. No, we don't have to eliminate our fears. We cannot eliminate them because that's a lie. The fear is a response of yourself. And if you try to eliminate the response, you're ending up eliminating yourself. You can't tell the difference between the ocean and the wave. How can you separate an ocean from its wave? The wave is a form of the ocean. You have to basically embody the ocean, calm it down, and digest the energy of the wave. When you take the energy of the wave and digest it, you convert it into another form of energy. You can make it go deeper, and it becomes the empowerment of creativity. All of these negative emotions, so to speak, except for one impulse, which is hatred, which is what's being pushed the most. But all of the rest of the so-called negative emotions are misplaced energy. They're used to defend ourselves. All we need to do is to transform them by experiencing all of these things. Experience the fear. And you will notice, if you observe that as you are experiencing it, not trying to hide from it and observe it from far away, but be in the thick of it, you will notice where it's coming from and what is really poking at you to keep it going. And then you will be able to do something about that, because that is a conditioned thought. That is a program. And then if you weed through all that, you will get into the core of hatred. This is what psychopathy is pushing at us, which is the part of us that we deny in ourselves. The evil thing that is within us, we don't accept, but so it remains outside. That's the so-called spiritual or esoteric principle of it. This is something most people have not gone into. And if they do get into it and even express it, it causes chaos in them. But it's also a place where even the psychopaths cannot enter because it causes chaos for them. If we end up coming to terms with our own evil, that which we experience on the outside, because it's really not separate from us. If we're all connected, really connected, not one, but connected, then everything we experience on the outside has an origin on the inside.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
And if this evil is the hardest thing to actually correlate with that truth. It is. I mean, you can't see yourself as evil as a psychopath because you're not acting it out. You don't want it. Now, the thing is, you're right about that, in my honest opinion. It's the one spiritual thing where our evolution has not quite come to terms with, the problem of evil. We've come to terms with our emotions. You've come to terms with your rage, with your grief, with your fear. Not everybody, but, people are coming to terms with actually, when I say, well, accept your emotions and heal them and all of transmute, this makes kind of a sense to people. But most people think I'm a loving, not most, but you either say, I'm not evil, that's not me over there. Okay. Or they say, well, we're all evil, I'm evil, whatever, I'll just love it. You can't love it. You can't resurrect death. You can resurrect the dead, but you can't resurrect death itself. Evil, what we call evil, is simply a misplaced divine impulse.
Living backwards. In English, it's just live backwards.
Exactly, but backwards in the sense of, well, your backwards is my forward. I mean, if I make a choice to turn around and move backwards, yeah, to you it's backwards, but I'm moving forwards in the direction opposite to yours. So existentially, even the Kabbalists say, and many, God has two faces. One of them is moving in one direction, the other one's moving in another direction. You need both faces for existence to be. The thing is that they don't need to be in love with each other and together. They don't interfere with each other. They cause each other, they give each other the context to be, but they don't mess with each other's directives. One doesn't need to stop the other. They don't have to become a neutral nothing. If you have something out of nothing, what's the result? Even in physics, even in physicality, opposing directions. If you take matter and antimatter and you combine them, basically matter is going in one direction, antimatter is going in another as far as their energy flows. And if you mix them up, it's going to become power, energy, and then nothing. If you take nothing and start jiggling, or whatever, or destabilizing nothingness, because nothingness is not the absence of everything. It's the absence of everything, of things. It's the absence of discernible things, but it still exists. There's no such thing as non-existence. There is the negation of existence. It's the opposite direction. So if this counterflow, this enantiodromic existence dynamic bonds with existence, it causes the negation of existence. So hatred is basically the negation of existence. You can't exist. You suck. That's hatred. The subjective feeling of that, of the passion of it, and it's pure. That's what all these evil people say. Well, evil is so pure. You know, yeah, if you really accept it and open up to what it is, you will discern it as something that has no doubts. This hatred has no doubts. Once it has doubts, you know that, you know, it's not really pure hatred. So anyways, that's the state of the world. This, I'm not giving a solution about this. I'm saying that, look, evil is a spiritual thing. It is not part of the essence of the world. This spiritual thing can be identified, but it's so chained in and bonded with the essence of the world, with the essence of our own being, that it's not easy to just remove it. It's like a thorn. If you, with barbs, if you try to remove it, you tear yourself apart. And you can feel it on the inside. You can't do that, you know, and still remain healthy. But if you deny it, it's going to come to you from the outside, because it is a destructive force. It is not you. This is the hardest metaphysical dynamic to be able to comprehend in any shape or form, in my honest opinion. But doing so is the imperative, in my honest opinion. Again, I've worked with this, and I realize, and I've made progress with this. But the thing is, it is not conventional esotericism, spirituality, or New Age thinking, or anything. It doesn't apply to these things. It's a different mode. And we are in such a turmoil right now. It's not because we need to accept the darkness and embrace the darkness and all of this. We need to discern what is the darkness that is really what we need to accept. That's part of us. The womb, the real darkness, the living, the warm, dark, you know, the real complement to light. And what is the false darkness? The basic negation of existence. In order for you to be existing, you need the no. You need to be able to negate. It's part of who you are. So you can't eliminate that, but you don't need to make love to that no, because then you would be negating yourself. That's what we are doing. That's why I believe in self-affirmation and not just plain affirming whatever floats our boat in a mindless manner. Anyways, this can go on and on, but I went from a secular dynamic of the political state of the world, or economics and certain things, and I moved into this esoteric dynamic, which is very, very hard to comprehend. I don't expect most people, even if you think you get it, you have to really work with it, and that can be very painful, you know. But I'm saying that this is here in the world, this archetype type, this type thing, this essence, this possibility, it's here. And if it's here, then there is hope. There's real hope. And I see the sun coming on your thing, so
yeah, the sun is coming up in the sky.
It's a good thing, but on the other hand, it's, you know,
not too bright yet.
Yeah, that's good.
It's there. Beautiful pink and orange clouds.
Yeah, well, it's all behind me, you know, as far as where the camera is. But your face is illuminating now, and the word I am, you have a little halo and that little picture of I am behind you. This thing below the globe, you have the word welcome, see? And all of these are telling. You have many symbols behind you, you know.
And I notice I keep Australia right above the welcome.
Exactly, right above the welcome. And between the well and the come. You know? So anyways, you know, that's how we know who Ron is. You look at the room behind him, and he has many you know, symbols and expressions of all this. But I believe in us. I believe in humanity. I believe in this planet. I love this planet. I love humanity, and I love all life on it, you know. But I also embody hatred like anybody else. There are things I dislike, that's one thing, but hatred, destroy, you know, is mixed up with my natural anger, with my natural fear, with my natural grief, you know, and disentangling these things is not easy. So this is anything but a do-it-yourself video thing. It's just a, you know, observation, you know, I would say. So until next time, thank you once again for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Aristo, and namaste.